Hey guys, today I decided that I'm finally going to show you guys how I edit my photos for Instagram. So I've had a lot of questions about what I do, you know, how do I keep my feed cohesive, how do I keep it consistent, what is it that I do? So I'm going to maybe start at the beginning. One thing that I said I was going to do on my Instagram post a couple of days ago was I said, okay, ask me your questions. I'm going to pick your top 5 and I'm going to cover them in addition to everything that I wanted to cover. Like my Instagram started off just like everybody else's. It started off for fun. I loved taking pictures, and then more importantly, I liked importing them into Lightroom and editing them. When I started taking photos with my phone was limiting, but as Instagram evolved, so did the programs. I started downloading them, I started playing around with them, I started playing around with, you know, spacing and lighting and all of these things. So first things first, I want to talk about cohesiveness and how do I keep everything looking the same. So that's been like a common question. So keeping everything looking the same, it doesn't just have to do with the way that you edit, it does have to do with the lighting. It helps that the majority of my photos are taken inside of my home or in my neighborhood. The lighting in my home is pretty consistent in certain rooms, so that all plays into it and it all helps. I don't take photos at night. I take mostly photos during the day. If I do take them at night, then I make sure that they're, you know, the tones are similar. And we'll get into what that means in a little bit, but that all helps. The second thing is I don't use a filter. I used to. So I used to use some of the VSCO filters. A6 was a favorite. Honestly, I don't even remember the rest. But what I found is by using those filters, my feed looked like everybody else's, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted my editing to be mine, and I wanted things to be a little bit different. For my blog, I use professional camera equipment. So I have a D Mark II. I bought the body used, but in excellent condition, and I bought my lenses brand new. That is what I use for my blog, and I edit all of my photos in Lightroom and then just import them into Photoshop if I need to tweak something very, very specific. But I find Lightroom is an amazing product and it's just as good as anything else. So that's what I use for my blog. Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop. For my Instagram, I use this guy here. I use my iPhone. I edit on my iPhone. I take photos on my iPhone, and that's just how I like to keep it. Instagram prioritizes iPhone photos over DSLR photos. So if you take your photos on your iPhone, if you edit them on your iPhone, all of that information is registered in the actual photograph itself. And when you upload it to Instagram and it goes into their database, it'll notice that. It'll prioritize your photo over somebody else's who maybe took their photo with a DSLR. And your photo technically should do better in the algorithm. It should be a little bit more visible. I edit using VSCO now. They've come out with a new update, and the new update in VSCO actually has it has a setting where you can save, they call it a recipe. Basically, it's a preset. So if you come up with a way to edit your photo that you really love, you actually save it as a recipe, and then every time you take a photo, you import it into VSCO. You can apply that recipe and then just make minor tweaks to it, just the same way you would do with a filter. So that's one way that you guys can do it too. That's how I do it. It's the fastest way for me. Once I edit it in VSCO, sometimes I upload it into the Lightroom app. Sorry, I'm getting distracted because Abby's literally right beside me. Oh, Abby. So then I import it into Lightroom, and then in Lightroom I apply some of the edits. So I discussed a little bit about lighting. I take my photos inside. What I want to explain is I only have maybe 2 rooms in my house that get good light. One is my bedroom. Hi, Abby. One is my bedroom. I have, if you guys follow me on Instagram, then you know I have like these big bay windows. That room in my bedroom tends to be bright all year long. The downstairs of my house, we live in a semi and we only have windows at the front and at the back of our home. It is so dark, it's terrible. But there are certain times of the day, like for example around noon, when the light gets reflected inside into my living room and it's a little bit brighter. All of my light is natural light. I have no lighting for videos, for photos. I don't have any of that stuff. I don't have that kind of equipment. I probably should, but I don't. It's just an expense that I'm not willing to make at the moment. I would rather buy bags. Sorry, Michael. So let's see how I do it. So I've taken a photo. First thing I'm gonna do is import it into VSCO. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys how to edit this specific photo. This is a photo that I took of Henrik. It was super cute, so I've imported into VSCO. Now I'm going to go and apply my filter. Now what I'm going to do, because it's really hard to show you guys here, because I'm not using filters that are made by VSCO, what I'm going to do is in my blog post, you guys can go to www.bluebirdkisses.com and I will write down all of these settings that are in here. These are all the settings that I have created and then I've saved, as you can see, in VSCO as a recipe. So I've applied my filter, okay? Next, I'm going to go to my settings here and then I'm going to adjust a couple of things just to make it a little nicer. So I'm going to increase the exposure just a little bit more. And then I don't like how sharp it is, so I'm actually going to go down and apply the sharpening. I'm going to remove it basically. And now that is my photo. So I'm going to save it. Now VSCO is a little bit limiting. There's not a lot. I mean, there's a lot, actually I shouldn't say that, but there's a lot that you can do with VSCO. But one of the limiting things that there is it doesn't, you can't play around with shadows, you can't play around with depth. So then I would take that out and I would actually go into here. And this is my Lightroom. So then I would find the photo that I just edited, here it is. I would go here to Light. And then here you can play around with a whole bunch of settings that you can't on the other side. You can actually increase the contrast, increase your exposure. I find if I increase the exposure in Lightroom as opposed to VSCO though, my photo becomes a lot more washed out, so I don't like to do that. But I do want to make my shadows a little deeper. So I would take my shadows button, I would drag it across. Now I think the highlights in this photo are a little bit too bright. I want to remove them a little bit as well. So I would take that down. I do want to increase the exposure just slightly. And then the blacks, this is another really important function. I want to take this down. It just gives it like a nice depth. So here's my final photo. This is the photo I love. This is the photo that I'm going to save. So here it is right here. Oops, wrong one. Here it is. This is the photo. Then I take it, I save it. I always want to save on maximum available. Now let me show you how to edit a photo that's a little bit grainy so I can show you how to use this PSC Express. Actually, while we're at it, Snapseed is another app that sometimes I use, but I find it's not that useful. It's great if you're trying to remove backgrounds, but it's not really what I do. So let's take another photo. We'll go to the very beginning. Oops. So let's take a photo. Maybe let's take this one. This is a photo that I took today. So let's take another photo. This is a photo that I actually took today. It's of Henrik. It's cute, but it's backlit. As you can see, that means the lighting is behind the subject. It's going to make my actual subject a little bit grainy when I go and I increase the exposure. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to apply the filter that I've created. Then I'm going to go into settings and I'm going to increase the exposure just a little bit more. As you can see, it's starting to get a bit grainy. Another thing I don't really like about this photo, aside from the sharpness, which I'm going to remove again, is just the temperature. I find it's a little bit too yellow and it's a little bit too pink. So I'm going to take those down just a little bit. Save it again. You always want to save on the absolute maximum that it'll let you save on. So in VSCO you want to do actual size. In Lightroom you want to do maximum size. So here's my photo. I'm going to go again. I'm going to lighten up some of the shadows this time as opposed to making them darker. And I am going to make my blacks a little bit darker. It'll make my photo pop. Okay, I'm going to apply my changes. Here's my photograph. Save to camera roll, maximum available. Then I'm going to import it here into PSE. So here's my photo. This is the last one that I worked on. So what you want to do is you want to go into settings here and scroll all the way to the right. You want to pick reduce luminance noise, and I'm going to just slide that across. Do you see how it instantly makes it better? It's a subtle change, but it's there. And then I wanted to do the same with the color noise. Now, if I feel like my photo now has become too washed out, I increase my sharpness just a little bit. And there's my final product. Now I can go and I can save it to my camera roll. So one thing that I wanted to mention is going back to the cohesiveness and the look and the editing. If your goal is to make your feed very curated, I suggest you do two things. One is pick an editing style that works for you. So take a look at other feeds, see what they're doing, see if that's what you like, see the colors and the tones that you love, that you would like to work with. And then I would take a whole bunch of pictures in different settings. So take the same photo over and over and over again in different places, in different spots around your room, and then edit them. Put them into VSCO, spend a couple hours and play around with the settings to see what works for you. You can even take one of the VSCO settings and then you can adjust the lighting and you can adjust the exposure and you can adjust the contrast and adjust all of those different settings to kind of make it your own and make it feel like your own, and then save it as a your preset, and then apply it over and over and over again. The more you play around with the tool, the better you're going to get at it, the faster you're going to get at it, and all of that's going to play into your feed and how cohesive it is. YouTube is an amazing resource for editing. There are tutorials in there that teach you everything from Lightroom to Photoshop to Premiere to any product you may want. It's in there. So do research, do your research, look it up, practice. There's really no substitute at the end of the day for practicing. So I hope that answers the majority of your questions. Oh, actually, there's one last thing. Apps. Going back to apps, you guys asked me if I use any other apps, and I don't for photography, but I do for watching and seeing how my feed works together, and it's called SNUG. This actually helps you. You can load it. So you'll see it'll take your existing feed. So here, this is, for example, this is perfect. So you can see here, these are all the photos from my feed. And then this was the photo that I wanted to put next. This is the photo that I pulled from my feed. But when I decide what's going to work, sometimes I put it into here to see if I like what it looks like or if I don't. And what ends up happening is if some of my pictures get pushed around, like this one, for example, I've had it up for a couple of weeks. I haven't really found a spot for it because I've taken new content that I would prefer to share. And just delete it. And it'll give you a good idea of like how your tones and everything sort of work together. So again, that's called SNUG. You guys can download that. I hope you guys found this helpful. Please remember to subscribe to my channel. Love your feedback. Please make sure to comment below, like this video, and remember to subscribe.